Infamous Iron Man, one of the coolest looking champions in the entire game in my opinion. He used to be very popular when 6 stars mattered for prestige, because everyone had a maxed out Infamous Iron Man as a 6 star for prestige purposes. You rarely see a lot of Ascended Infamous Iron Mans because Ascension doesn't count towards prestige, but obviously just the actual rank 5 does. So there are a lot of rank 5 Infamous Iron Mans that used to be out there, and as far as an attacker goes, he has some very interesting stuff. I wouldn't say he's the craziest attacker for most things, but he does have a lot of niche circumstances that just make him quite good for some certain champions or certain nodes in the game. So he's definitely a very good counter for Bishop, as you probably know already. He's a very good counter for Havok, for the Storms, for Kitty Pryde. Those two are obviously a bit less common on defense, but he does have a very niche ability to where if the opponent would trigger 2 or more prowess at a time, they are instead removed and replaced with an energy vulnerability. So in any circumstance where that actually happens, he's going to be very good for it. And yeah, so that's one of his big niches. The other one is just how his power control works, because it's kind of like Dr. Doom, where it's like he's got this kind of lockdown cycle, except it's not nearly as good as Dr. Doom's because you have to put just way more effort into it. But I'm going to show you what this lockdown cycle is. And basically we just want to get to an SP3 first, and then what we're going to do is we're going to charge our heavy to trigger our aura, and then don't actually release the heavy, we just go for the special 3. That means they're still going to be stunned at the end of the attack, and then we can just go for a combo, go for a relic, and then we go for an SP1. What the SP1 is going to do is it's going to special lock them until my aura expires, and your SP3 gives you a 24-second aura if the aura was already active. So in that case, you just get a very long special lock and then can keep them at high bars of power, which is what you want, because then you want to use your SP2, because the SP2 is your damage special. It's going to do a bunch of power burn damage on each hit, and at that point the defender is definitely melting, and yeah, Winter Soldier is just dead like that. So after we threw our SP3, Winter Soldier didn't get the chance to throw a single special attack, which was pretty cool. As far as his damage goes, 1 minute and 13 seconds is fine. It's not crazy, it's not bad. He's definitely not a massive damage dealer or anything, but we're going to see the same exact thing but against a mutant champion now, just to show class advantage scenario. And yeah, so just build to an SP3, and we're going to do our SP2 bombs, and at that point hopefully the defender is dead, and that's just kind of how you play Infamous Iron Man. You just go for the SP3s, or play Infamous Iron Man for like longer fights, like fights where speed isn't insanely relevant. You want to go for SP3 into the SP1 into SP2s. So like that, I did release the heavy there because I needed a little bit more power, but they were still stunned at the end anyway, so I was able to get my opening immediately after, and then we just relic into an SP1 and build back up to 2 bars of power. So yeah, at this point, got a nice intercept there, and we're just going to go for 2 bars, drop the SP2, it does some pretty nice power burn damage, and then we're just doing a bunch of red numbers on basics, because the red numbers will come from both power burn on the basic attacks, or also if we would land a critical hit, he does the same thing Guardian does, where he is going to instead do a burst of shock damage. So alright, you probably know Infamous Iron Man because of his bishop killing mechanics, and that's basically the whole point of his, if the opponent triggers 2 prowess at a time, replace them with an energy vulnerability thing, because that's just something that Bishop does quite often. As you can see, he's not getting any prowess, instead he's just getting a bunch of energy vulnerabilities. And yeah, we're just going to do our regular drop SP2s and win kind of cycle, and yeah, so we've got 10 energy vulnerabilities up now, 11, drop the SP2, and really good damage there. And because it's Hurt Locker, I'm going to go for another SP1 before I go for a second SP2. But either way, we do a partial dex, and then I'm going to go for a relic, and then drop an SP1 pretty soon. And those energy vulnerabilities are going up and up and up. Unfortunately, their potency is lowered by each copy of themselves, so every time I place another energy vulnerability, it's going to be less potent than the one prior, but still, it is definitely pretty nice. So we dropped the SP2, and just that damage was pretty crazy. So like this Eternity of Pain Bishop, it just got destroyed. That was 850,000 health Bishop in only a minute. So yeah, he's very solid for Bishop. That's just the thing iDoom is good for. So next up we're going to fight Havok in the same quest, and I'm speeding this fight up because it's not like the fastest fight out there, but it's another fight where whenever Havok would drop a special, he consumes part of his plasma to place prowess, and then the prowess is going to become an energy vulnerability with iDoom. So that's a really fun thing. And then the node doesn't let me power control, so I made a mistake by dropping SP2s in the Aura of Iron. I kind of realized that, hey, if I don't have access to power burn, it's just better to not drop them in the Aura, because then I just place actual shocks, which actually do damage, instead of power burn, which doesn't. So there you go, you see me place some shocks, and obviously Havok has a lot of energy resistance, but that doesn't really matter when replacing a bunch of energy vulnerabilities every time Havok throws a special attack. So you can see the shocks don't do too bad. Definitely some decent damage, even though there aren't that many of them. And yeah, we just continue to drop SP2s at this point without the Aura, just again because we can't power control them with the node. And then this Havok is almost dead. So yeah, not like the fastest takedown, but it was very safe. Havok got no prowess, and then we countered all the other threats of the fight. So next up, we're gonna fight a Professor X in Alliance War, and I have 4 Alliance War fights because iDoom is current tactic. I've been assigned him for 2 different wars, and probably more coming in both of the next season and more this season. But I actually played this fight badly. In all of the other fights, iDoom's gonna look very good. I, for some reason, put the one where he doesn't look very good, like at the very start, but obviously it is worth showing some negative things to the character. But I think this fight is just a lot better if I just use the SP2 rotation, because I'm gonna go for an SP3 rotation and almost die. Whereas if I went for SP2s, the fight would have been also just very fine, and then I wouldn't have came close to dying. So I'm dropping the SP3 here, and the reason this is going to go so bad is just because, yeah, I can do the SP3 lockdown cycle, but what the problem is that I won't be able to inflict debuffs to ramp up the tactic. And obviously you kind of need to ramp up the tactic when you're fighting a tactic defender. So as you can see, the heal block is going to go away, and then we're not going to have access to any more shocks because our mediums will instead place power burn. And I'm just kind of screwed at this point because he gets the power gain, and I'm like, well, what do I do now? So I dropped the SP2, and at this point it's just like, this isn't very good. The power gain is not active at the moment. He could have dropped an SP3 there. I'm lucky that he didn't. That would have been the death of me because of how many prowess he had. But at this point, I'm like, well, okay, time to just spam a bunch of mediums and get the shocks active and get my Secutor charges going. So again, if you just go for an SP2 cycle in this fight, which is what I should have done, this just goes very well. Like you can see, we're doing some nice damage, and Professor X didn't even have like any power there. So at this point, we're just trying to finish him off. But yeah, SP2 cycle, and then you do very well in this fight. Just don't go for an SP3 rotation with iDoom in War because you don't have access to those shocks to ramp up your Secutor charges. So yeah, he's actually quite a good war attacker, and you're going to see a lot of that for the next fight, which is going to be against Sauron on node 43. And node 43 is 2 nodes, or 3 nodes technically. Hazard Shift, Shock and Bleed, which as long as iDoom has his armor up, he's immune to both Shock and Bleed. So that's a very, very nice counter to that portion of the fight. And then we have insult to injury, which it doesn't matter, because if I can't get debuffs on me, then it doesn't matter at all. But also aggression and prowess, which sometimes you're going to see some of the prowess trigger at the same time that Sauron triggers a personal prowess, and whenever that happens, we're actually going to place an energy vulnerability, which is fun. But my game lagged there. I couldn't parry at the start of the fight. I wasted my invul boost, but it's going to be fine, because we're just going to get to an SP2, and then he's just going to die. It's going to be a pretty good time. So anyway, there's an energy vulnerability, and at this point, I'm just trying to build to an SP2. I'm just going to go for one combo, finish the whole heavy attack. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm just going to drop the SP2. Yeah, he's dead. So that was like a 30-second mini-boss, which is probably the fastest mini-boss I've ever taken down this season. So, yeah, pretty fun fight there. Next up, we're fighting Negasonic Teenage Warhead on node 14. And the reason Negasonic Teenage Warhead is a bit difficult on this node is because of the fact that with Ebb and Flow knockdown, and just the fact that you can't parry her basic attacks because they're non-contact, it just becomes difficult to knock her down and remove the protection from the node. And also, you can't really remove the evade portion of her kit, because if you can't knock her down consistently, that evade's just going to come back and you could get messed up by it. But Idum is going to handle all those problems because of the fact that his heavy attack can be chained mid-combo as long as he has a shock to consume. So at that point, it's just about countering her special attacks and just making sure to knock her down every once in a while to keep the evade under control. And then she's just going to die very, very swiftly. So I'm going to actually drop an SP1 here, which ended up being a mistake because I'm going to lose the heal block, and then she's at 2%. She's going to regen a bit, so it's just going to take a bit more time to kill her, which is a bit annoying, but it's not like a massive problem. We go for the heal block there, and then I'm just going to kill her after this special attack with that medium attack right there. So yeah, there's that fight, and then we have one more Alliance War fight, which is against this Havok on node 29, which is EMP modification, and Idum is pretty solid for this fight just because he's immune to shock. And again, there's a bunch of, or maybe not a bunch of different ways, but there's a way that you can just kind of remove Havok's prowess and it'll get replaced with the energy vulnerability. Every time he throws a special attack, he's going to gain the prowess, so we just kind of do that. I don't bait that many specials against Havok this fight though, which is going to make the fight last a lot longer, because obviously at the same time I want his power to be relatively high, so it does kind of become a conflict of interest, you could say, where like I want him to throw specials for the energy vulnerability, but I also want his bars of power high for my SP2. So that is definitely something about Idum that I don't necessarily like, is sometimes you want them throwing your specials and sometimes you don't want them throwing their specials. I kind of wish his power burn was based off of just power instead of current power, because the way his power burn scales is like, if they have more power, then you do more damage. I feel like he should just be power burning a specific amount each time instead of it scaling with how much power the opponent actually has. But unfortunately that's not the case, and I don't think Idum's getting a tune-up anytime soon, so I don't expect that to ever be different. But one thing that I do expect relatively soon for Idum is a 7-star edition, and I genuinely think he would be quite good as a 7-star. There's a bunch of champions in the game who just benefit a lot from the 7-star juice, you could say. I think Idum could definitely be one of them, because his biggest problem is his damage is just okay, but with 7-star stats, that obviously becomes completely different, because 7 stars definitely hit harder than 6 stars. I feel like that goes without saying. So anyway, he definitely could be in the next Titan Crystal. Obviously, we don't really know what the next Titan Crystal is other than the actual new champ editions, but it is very likely that the two mystery characters are going to be a mutant and a tech. So I do think there is a decent chance that Idum is going to be one of those new ones, and I personally am hoarding all of my Titan shards for the next Titan crystal, and I would not mind at all if I pulled a 7-star Idum. I kind of would want him awakened, but if I could get him awakened, then I'd have a pretty good time with the 7-star. I probably would rank him up. So yeah, he's a very cool champion, a champion that I can definitely see myself playing. Even though he's not like the best tech champ out there, he's still pretty decent. So yeah, I would definitely play a 7-star Idum. And what are we doing now? I think we're in like Thronebreaker EQ or something. Just showing them off on the tech nodes, which I think this one, it's like you want to power drain, burn, or steal, and Idum has a lot of power burn in his kit, so yeah, that's why I'm just showcasing him on this path, because you can see his power burn in action. It's every time that we crit with the Aura of Iron, I think, that we power burn. So yeah, at that point, we just are hoping for some crits, and then we're gonna have a pretty good time. So yeah, we drop a heavy attack, and then we do the SP2, it does some nice damage, and then we're just gonna kill him pretty shortly after. So yeah, we're just gonna go for an SP1, and that's gonna finish the job. Right after the little kick, and then we drop SP1. It doesn't finish the job, never mind, but that medium attack does, so there we go. And then we move on to one more fight on that path, and it's just going to be against that Luke Cage right there. And yeah, same thing, it's just ramping up the Furies from power burning, and then just drop the SP2 with Luke ideally at high power. So yeah, I do think there's just a conflict of interest with trying to power control the opponent and then also keep their bars of power high at the same time. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but whatever. It's not always a problem, it's just weird. I don't get the playstyle, but that's why I said the whole thing earlier about me wishing that his power burn was just a flat amount of power rather than the amount of power the opponent has. So it's fine. Anyway, we're gonna try to power control Luke a little bit more, and yeah, so our medium's power burn, and then every time we crit re-power burn. So those are the ways we access power burn for these tech nodes. And there we go. We're just going to try to chip Luke down, and then we kill him with SP1 right there. So alright, I think next up we have another path that I want to take. This is in the side quest actually, and it has Backblast. So Backblast is a node that doubles your crit damage, but if you do a crit that exceeds 5% of the defender's health, then you're going to receive an Incinerate. Fortunately, there are two things that make Idum really good for Backblast. One, he can't actually crit in the yellow number form, so the shock damage that comes from when we would crit just gets really high, but we don't actually have the yellow number to get incinerated. And also, we can't get incinerated anyway, because Idum is completely incinerate immune with the armor up. So anyway, he's not poison immune, so we definitely can get poisoned versus Toad. Obviously, cornering Toad is a rough time sometimes, so I wanted to back up a little bit and just set myself up for another SP2, and then hopefully this just does the job, which it's going to. It's gonna have enough damage, so there we go. Then we're gonna move on to the next defender on the path, which is Strife, and just do largely the same thing. I'm just showcasing you against some, showcasing Idum against some general mutants at this point, because I didn't have any Battlegrounds content for this guy, because he's not very good in either of the Battlegrounds metas right now. He's alright for the victory track, but Power Snack is a bit frustrating, because then you have to work to get your armor up back after it gets eaten up, so and then the circuit he's not very good for, because you don't want to be doing energy debuffs, and he like always has a shock, so maybe he could be useful in the circuit anyway, but I strongly doubt it. So yeah, this Strife is almost dead. We're just hoping for a few more crits, and then we're gonna kill him with a couple hits right after. So Next up on the path, we have a Danny Moonstar. Same thing, just get to an SP2. She's probably not going to die with the initial SP2, but then we'll just kill her shortly afterwards. And then, yeah, that's just going to be that path. So after this path, I have a boss in Act 9 that I want to show off, and then that'll be the video. Not one of my longer showcases, but I didn't have that much time to get a recording for this stuff, because I actually ranked Idun like only a week ago, which is, for my champion showcases, usually I like put usually they're like a long time in the making, like once I rank the champ. Idun just wasn't the case, which obviously I could have waited to put the showcase out for when I did more stuff with him, but I kind of wanted to get this out now because he's current war tactic, and he's pretty good for the war tactic, and also I just think that there's a possibility of him being in the next Titan Crystal. And I've also just been fishing for some nice showcase videos recently, and Idun's just a character I want to talk about because he's very cool. So anyway, we got one more boss, and that's going to be against this Storm Pyramid X in 9.1. And for this fight, we are going to be running the Penny Parker synergy, which is going to allow us to place incinerates instead of shocks. Because what the Penny Parker synergy does is whenever either champion is going to place a debuff, whether it's incinerate or shock that the defender is immune to, they will instead place the other one. So Idun will place incinerates versus shock immune, Penny will place shocks versus incinerate immune. It's a really, really nice synergy, and it might be useful for some stuff in Alliance War. I might get a Penny and Idun assignment eventually. Probably not, because my Penny's unduped, so there's not a lot of reason to take her into war, but you know, there's always a chance. So yeah, so we are going to be placing some energy vulnerabilities against the Storm Pyramid X and doing some pretty nice power burn damage. She's not going to throw any SP2s in this fight, and then she's going to throw some SP1s, but that's alright. We're just hoping that the glancing doesn't trigger too much, because I obviously need to be placing at least one incinerate when I want to trigger the aura, just so I'm able to actually do damage. So yeah, there we go, place an incinerate there, and then I'm going to drop another SP2 here. Her power bar isn't that high, but it still does some quite nice damage because we have a bunch of energy vulnerabilities active. And yeah, she's just melting at this point. It's not going to be like the fastest kill out there, but it still did feel pretty good. And then like I died doing this on the initial run, but I didn't use Idun for the initial run. I used like Arcade and Penny Parker for it, and then I messed up. But Idun did this pretty well, so I'm happy with how it went. We go for an SP2, and then the power burn damage once again is just very nice. And I'm just gonna try to fish for a kill shot at this point, but I can trigger my aura right here and then power burn her a little bit, and then I'm gonna go for another SP1, which is gonna and then trigger a special lock, and then yeah, she's just locked down. So I don't even need the other SP1. So that is my Idun showcase. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know Idun is not one of the best tech champions out there, but he is pretty fun to play and he looks really cool, so I'm very happy with him, and I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you in the next one.